Past the midway point, who's played the best? Welcome to the SumerSports show live on Veterans Day. Thank you to all the veterans who are listening for your service. I hope you're enjoying a relaxing day and you feel appreciated. And I hope you don't mind that we are going to spread that appreciation around today to some NFL players who are putting together very good seasons. I'm Lindsay Rhodes. Sam Bruchhaus is with me as always. Producer Stopsky working behind the scenes with lots of graphics coming up for you to follow along on YouTube or Twitter, wherever you're watching, as we name a mid-season All-Pro SumerScore team. Sam, this is not Sam's picks for the midway point All-Pro team. It's not Lindsay Rhodes's picks. It is the SumerScore team. We're letting the tool tell us who is playing best. And with that in mind, I think it's worth telling everybody a little bit about the tool because we've tweaked it recently.
Precisely. So what we will be presenting today are our season scores. As we talked about many times, we do make evaluations of players' plays at each 10th of a second. And then we compare those to everything going back to 2016. So what this is today is rolling those up all the way up to week 10 and comparing to every other performance by a player between weeks 1 and weeks 10 going back to 2016 as well. So it is a cumulative score. It includes all of the players' snaps from week 1 to now, and it encapsulates all of that. What we're trying to do here is tell you, number one, how rare is a player's performance given the context of the season up to week 10? And number two, how much should you trust it? So the scale that we are using is in the language of football. You're going to hear me and Lindsay say a lot of player of the year caliber players, a lot of all pro, meaning, one of the best players at your position, a pro bowler, an impact starter. Those blue chip grades mean that this player is a guy that all 32 teams want on their team. Then we get into those greens, the solid starter, quality starter, average starter. That means this is a good player. He's having an above average season. Is he absolutely knocking the ball out of the ballpark? Not necessarily, but he is doing good stuff for his team. Then we start getting into those some standard grades. Typically, given the way that we approach this, we really only see these for players who are really not performing well or players who have not played an absolute ton but are getting a shot. That's your backups and your rotational players. These also apply to games. So think of those 10s when we talk about a player of the year style game. That's a true record-breaking game. When you start thinking about those other blue chip games, those are really, really good games that are standout, player of the week type stuff. Green games, you're above the 50th percentile. You're doing your job. Below the 50th percentile are those other sub-starter, substandard games. So that's how we'll be approaching it this week. And this is how we're approaching the SumerScore All-Pro. Yeah, this is a really exciting thing, Lindsay. It was a really fun exercise.
In general, what our data team collectively agreed on was that the season percentiles were a little bit misleading.
Right.
That sometimes the output that separated players who were like in the 85th percentile and the 71st percentile were actually very small numbers. And the percentile scores made it look like there was a bigger gap in talent or production. So we moved to the tiers system that you're seeing here that we think more accurately paint a picture of how each individual player actually compares to their peers. And I think many of us are familiar with this concept from fantasy, right? Like in the first round, honestly, mostly matters where you're picking. But like, is it Jamar Chase? Is it Justin Jefferson? Is it CD Lamb, right? Like you're splitting hairs to create one versus the other. And then obviously things happen throughout the course of the season. But that said, there is a slight problem with this way of bucketing players in tiers when it comes to exercises like this, where the goal is to split hairs and pick one player over another player. So we are going to end up referencing their percentile ranking as a tiebreaker, so to speak, in a few of these cases. And the percentiles, as Sam already mentioned, are not reflected of as they have been in years past with SumerScores, where they rank against players at their position group. Right. This year, it's against every player in their position group since 2016. So Correct. If we tell you somebody is in the 99th percentile or you see a percentile like that, you know that that is somebody who is having a historically good season, right? Because against everyone in their position group since 2016, their score, so to speak, their SumerScore is in the 99th percentile out of all of those performances.
Precisely. And I think you really laid it out, Lindsay. A lot of the times we get so stuck up in ranking these players when there can be all types of great performances. This year, edge rushers are doing really well. This year, there's a lot of good linebackers. And the difference between the third best linebacker as it pertains to SumerScore is like 0.001 against the 10th best linebacker. And all of those guys are having excellent seasons on the year. So I'm really excited about this way because this is, number one, how teams in the league approach their scouting grades.
Right.
But this is bringing an analytical perspective and an analytical process to this type of stuff that hasn't really existed out there before.
Yeah. So we're kind of rolling it out for the first time here today. And hopefully it's easier for you guys to understand. And hopefully the results sort of match what you guys might expect. Again, these are the top scorers at each position according to SumerScore. We haven't manipulated any of this. These are the people who have scored the highest. And so we're going to plug them into the All-Pro rosters and have a discussion. And we're going to start, as always, with the quarterbacks. And I kind of think that some people will be surprised by the quarterback who is on our first team.
On the first team this year, and by all odds, typically because the MVP is a quarterback, is Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert has faced an immense amount of adversity and has overcame it to the best of his ability. He's been basically the sole engine of this Chargers offense all year, and he's performed really well, Lindsay. So as a result, our SumerScores have picked up, number one, that he can be trusted to play really well the rest of the season. Number two, that he is being asked to do a ton. And number three, that he's performing pretty well. And this is one of the rare times, Lindsay, that you can kind of have a wandering eye to quarterback wins, and it matches what these SumerScores are saying on every 10th of a second of every play that Justin Herbert has been in. He has overcame, he has been asked a ton of, and he has put up really good games against really good opponents. His blue chip grades were against teams like the Chiefs and against some of these other teams that are really good. And so it's really exciting to see Justin Herbert, always known as If Man to a certain degree, play really well, but also put up a pretty good record through week 10.
Yeah, it's been fascinating watching him and his development this year because it feels like he's added a little wrinkle of off of the scrambles, which is something we haven't necessarily seen him do in years past, but also it's unfortunate that they've been necessary with the way that things have gone for their offensive line. I do think that he is an interesting use case here to discuss SumerScores, though, so I want to spend a little bit more time talking about him than I will about every other player that is to follow, because he does not pop at the top of any of our other analytical metrics that we really like. Like, you can filter all of the different EPA stuff, under pressure. Like, it doesn't necessarily tell the story of he is number one, right? Like, Sam Darnold will pop up in a bunch of different places. Justin Herbert does not. And I think, and I'd love to get your take on this too, but my take is that the SumerScore is accounting for things that we don't currently account for in any other number set, which is the degree of difficulty. So if you are under pressure and running for your life, and then you complete a throw that sort of like our eyes would tell us, I can't believe you got that off or completed that pass, SumerScore is going to reward that in a way that I can't think of any other like number-based system that is going to. EPA isn't going to say, oh, he threaded the needle on that throw and got it past two defenders and placed it perfectly where the wide receiver could catch it like a tight window. I mean, I know there are tight window throws, but you know what I mean? I think that that's what we're seeing here, is that our computer vision is picking up on a degree of difficulty at which Justin Herbert is performing that we're not seeing necessarily with Sam Darnold, whose EPA is off the charts, but he's being asked to do less maybe and less difficult things.
Precisely. Let's just enumerate it here. He's 17th in expected points added per play. He's 11th in success rate amongst quarterbacks. And I think the refrain that we've heard over the years on this show and other places that is a team stat has, no better place or no better application than Justin Herbert. The real innovation of our SumerScore model is that at the base layer, when the model is making these evaluations, it is understanding or seeking to understand the relationship between every player at every 10th of a second. That's something that you can seek to do as a third party when watching a play develop, but you can't do it as compared to all thousands and thousands and thousands of other plays that have existed going back to 2016 in the way that our model can. And of course, there are some nuances in the way that it picks up on that humans can pick up on. But when you get to week 10 for a quarterback who is in every single offensive snap, and you're starting to pick up on these relationships between the offensive linemen. The offensive line has not synced most of the year for the Chargers. You're starting to pick up between the relationship between those linemen and the quarterback, where Justin Herbert is having to deliver really tough throws
that are sometimes dropped
into tight windows while getting hit. And he's doing it quite consistently. And I think the addition that launched him up to this all-pro caliber rating, this all pro caliber score, is that rushing ability that we have really not seen. I wrote about it several times last year that it felt like it was coming. He seems to be an excellent athlete. We're finally seeing it this year. In terms of total EPA this year, he is 8th amongst quarterbacks in total rush EPA. That's another big thing that he's excelling on in terms of that role in SumerScore. And I think that's what's launching him to this MVP caliber. But one thing I do want to note before we move on to some of the other quarterbacks, key item, he is having a all-pro caliber year. He is not having a perfect MVP caliber year. This is a slightly down year for quarterbacks.
Yeah.
We really don't have that many quarterbacks who are performing extremely well. So I wouldn't be shocked if at some point maybe he moves down a tier depending on the schedule or something like that. And I wouldn't be shocked to see it if, this just isn't a great quarterback year, much like we saw 2 years ago when Lamar Jackson won the MVP. So an excellent player playing at a really high rate, but in terms of just sheer performance, it's not the best we've ever seen.
Yeah. And interesting, I think, for like MVP and the awards that will happen at the end of the season. And honestly, to a degree, even all pro, when humans vote for these things, they will take into account a bunch of different narrative drivers that we are not for purposes of this. Right. Like, so although I would argue that maybe like the things that we've discussed here about why Justin Herbert is popping here as opposed to in the numbers really should help his narrative, right?
Definitely.
Like, so if the Chargers were to find themselves in the playoffs at the end of the year, maybe there is a strong argument for Justin Herbert to be the MVP because he is being asked to carry this team with the offensive line issues that they've had. And I mean, I'm not knocking their wide receiver core. I love Ladd McConkey and Keenan Allen. What he did on Sunday Night Football was incredible and becoming the all-time leader. But like, we haven't necessarily seen the wide receiver play up to the level that you might hope for, I suppose, in this scenario. So
exactly. And speaking about that, Lindsay, I think for the betting fans of this podcast, you get this information and you get the understanding that he's playing at an all-pro level. There's only 2 all-pro quarterbacks a year. And you go look at the betting lines for MVP. Currently, he is 7th at plus 2,200. Guys like Josh Allen are ahead of him. Guys like Jonathan Taylor, who's a running back, are ahead of him. Maybe this is the year that a running back finally wins. I'm inclined to say that's probably not the case. But speaking about those narratives, the Chargers have 7 wins. The Chargers are 7-3. Like, there's 7 teams that have 7 wins, 8 teams that have 7 wins. Like, they're winning games despite of all this. And despite of all this, that the SumerScore is recognizing is that Justin Herbert is playing extremely well. So maybe there's some real true value, particularly if they can continue winning at this clip, that, right now Justin Herbert is extremely undervalued.
Who's the second team quarterback?
So the second team quarterback is an extremely fun one, and it's the flip side, baby. It is number 1 currently in the MVP odds, but a shocker, the second year, Drake May. And Drake May had a slower start of the year in terms of SumerScore, but we've had Sean Syed on here who talked about he liked what he was seeing. It just wasn't all the way there. Then in the last 4 or 5 weeks, he's really locked in. Two weeks ago and 3 weeks ago, he had 2 certified blue chip games. The bookends of that were 2 quality games. Kind of took a step back this week, but altogether, he's had a true impact starter, Pro Bowl caliber year. He has made the leap to a true franchise quarterback where we wanted to see him in year 2. And now he's positioned himself and the New England Patriots to turn around their team basically in 1 year and become what seems to be a true contender, Lindsay.
I cannot believe that they've doubled their win total already from last year. Like, I thought that they would be much better this year. I still thought that even the preseason win total, we've talked a lot more about betting today than we normally do. I thought that was a little bit too high. And here they are. I think they've already covered. I think it was 7.5. But this guy is second in total EPA, fifth in EPA per play off of play action, fourth highest EPA per play when trailing, seventh highest EPA per play when leading. Like, every scenario, he just checks so many boxes. So he's having an outstanding season. It's been really fun to watch what that's done for the Patriots' chances. I feel like it's worth noting here. Mahomes, Sam Darnold, there are some other quarterbacks that are having outstanding seasons. And going back to that MVP, I think because it's a narrative award, it might be hard for some of these guys to surpass Mahomes unless something happens down the stretch.
Yeah. Currently, we have 3 players who have certified blue chip grades through week 10. That is Herbert and May, who we've talked about through week 2, and Dak Prescott, who has kind of started tailing off in recent weeks, but his absolutely incredible performances early on and his consistency at a quality starting level in the last couple of weeks has kept him at that blue chip impact starter Pro Bowler grade. Inches away from that grade is Patrick Mahomes, who had a bye week this week. That's probably the primary reason why he is currently at the quality starter level. Patrick Mahomes is right there. So I think those top 4 are the ones to look at as it pertains to MVP, as it pertains to the all-pro list at the end of the year.
All right, let's get to the running backs. And I think that they're pretty obvious. So maybe there's less dramatic reason to spend a whole lot of time talking about them. You already mentioned Jonathan Taylor having an incredible year. He is the first team running back.
He's having an incredible year. There's no doubt about it. He's having a player of the year caliber year, one of the best years we have on record for a running back. You name it. SumerScore loves it. Expected points added per rush loves it. Yards per carry loves it. From the most basic of stats to the most advanced of stats, that's looking at every single tiny little element on the field. He's having a crazy year, a 99th percentile year. And that's a real that's a real kind of, there's all kinds of octopus tentacles that are coming out for this. Shane Steichen is coach of the year. We're going to get to some of the offensive linemen that they have. Danny Dimes' rise as a kind of Phoenix quarterback. A lot of that can be tied into this. And I think Jonathan Taylor's performance this year has been a major contributor to that, but also maybe a major product of that as well.
I agree with the way that you phrased that 100%. Christian McCaffrey, the second team running back. No surprise except for the only surprise here is the fact, we've watched the season go on. He's been incredible. The only surprise I'll note is that he was the guy at the beginning of the year that everyone was so worried about, that he wasn't going to come back from injury. He's been the guy who has remained injury free on that San Francisco 49ers squad.
This may be a unique perspective on this, but I think that those fears, obviously injuries are so variant. Let's take out the injury concerns. I think those fears have actually shown up in the running game. The difference is that Christian McCaffrey has basically invented himself as now like Wes Welker out of the backfield all of a sudden. Like, the man is keeping a 25.79% target share. That would be top 20 amongst wide receivers. So he's basically shouldering a wide receiver 1 target share. And he has a pretty good yards per route run as well. So he's basically reinvented himself into this true alpha receiving back. And that's where he's really dominated. I'm talking 7 blue chip individual performances in games out of the weeks that they have played. Like, he is putting together a truly special receiving performance out of the backfield and for running backs. And it's an interesting compliment to Jonathan Taylor as well. Jonathan Taylor's been killing it on the ground behind an excellent offensive line. Christian McCaffrey is doing it a completely new way. He's always been a receiving threat, but he is much more of a kind of receiving back than he's ever been. And quite frankly, he's one of the best of all time at doing that this year.
2 things. Do you think that if San Francisco had not been as injured as they have been this season, that we would be seeing this season from him? because they've really had a lot of their wide receivers going in and out of the lineup, and they've had to kind of like put it together with some tape. And Christian McCaffrey might have ended up being the tape. I tend to believe that he would have been a priority in the offense regardless, but maybe not to the degree that he has been.
It's a really excellent question. I think that, frankly, it would be a different story. I think he would still be having these excellent blue chip performances. I think it would be based on efficiency rather than volume. Right now, it's truly anchored in that opportunity, in that 25+% target share, and he's doing really well on them. I think that the efficiency would go even higher than that, which is really saying something because he's already really efficient. If he had a full deck with Ayuk and a full slate of Kittle, a full slate of Juwan Johnson, a full slate of Ricky Pearsall, et cetera, et cetera.
We also have the ability at Sumer to track players' playing speed. And if I'm not mistaken, Christian's has gone down this year, right?
Correct. And that's a trend that we've seen in the past 2 years, which kind of also plays into this reinvention of Christian McCaffrey. And the thing is that we've always thought of Kamara and McCaffrey as the premier receiving backs, but this is like a whole nother level. Like this is a canary in a coal mine moment that honestly, Lindsay, may tell us a little bit more as younger running backs come into the league about how to elongate these careers. Maybe, and Austin Eckler, quite frankly, is probably the first guy to do this at a much smaller level to a certain degree. He didn't have to ever shoulder, an entire offense the way Christian McCaffrey does. But maybe if you're able to build yourself into this excellent kind of short space wide receiver possession guy who can break it off at the end of plays from time to time, you can become a long-term running back rather than a short-term running back.
Since I mentioned the athletic performance metrics, I should go back to Jonathan Taylor for a second and point out the fact that he has gotten faster this year.
Right.
Well, the last couple of years, it's been like he's like a V in terms
Correct.
of his speed times. So at the beginning, he was very, very fast. And then he had 2 years where he was dealing with ankle injuries where it dipped. And then in the last couple of years, we've seen that speed come back up to almost where it was earlier in his career, which is really interesting and highly notable because now we're seeing evidence of somebody almost he hasn't gotten faster than he was.
Right.
But after kind of having that dip, we're seeing more of who we saw the first couple of years that he was in the league, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a mix of having better lanes to get up to full speed, number one. And number two, he's been banged up, and his ability to stay healthy and continue to be healthy is really key to the Colts' success right now.
And there's no doubt that the environment is much better, and that's always hugely important for running backs, especially if they are actually running the football. Let's go to wide receiver, and one of the best stories of the entire season, in my opinion, and that is the wide receiver on our first team out of Seattle, Jackson Smith-Njigba, whose numbers are insane. As you see here, we've got 3 wide receivers on the first team. My guess is that they'd be the guys that you would guess that this is a case of the AI matching the eye.
Pretty much. I think if you were to have watched any of this season, pretty much everyone on this list checks out. And I think, frankly, with the kind of caveat of Jackson Smith-Njigba on the first team, even though we did know he was going to see an increased role, for the most part, the guys on the first and second team are the players that you would think would be the best wide receivers in the league. This goes back to our sticky stats research. The statistics do a fantastic job of identifying how good a wide receiver actually is and how good they will continue to be. And Jackson Smith-Njigba is really testing that this year. Currently, he's at plus 230 to be the offensive player of the year. Our statistics indicate that he probably should be the offensive player of the year by a small hair over Jonathan Taylor, who's currently the minus 320 favorite, which is pretty favorited there. But here's some numbers for you, Lindsay. He is over a yard. And for context on the scale of yards per route run, it's 0 to typically about 3.5. He is a yard over the next best pass catcher in yards per route run with over 100 routes.
He has a yards per route run. For people who are familiar with this stat and follow it, this is crazy. It's 4.61.
Yeah. So basically,
4.61. You guys, the highest yards per route run that a wide receiver has had since 2022. This is how far back the tracking goes on our website, SumerSports.com. You can check on the data and look at all of this for yourself. Was Tyreek Hill's 3.88 in 2023. Like, this is off the charts bananas.
It's basically like if he's on the field and runs 2 routes, you're getting a first down. Moreover, he is getting a first down. And what's insane about that, Lindsay, is that he's doing it at a 38.81% target share, which, if you were wondering, is over 5 percentage points over second place for pass catchers with over 100 routes run. This basically means like everyone in the stadium, in the country, perhaps in the world, knows the ball is going to Jackson Smith-Njigba, and he is still just absolutely torching people.
Yeah. It's insane. The season that he is having is so special. Again, you mentioned his competition in the target share category. This is the highest target share for a wide receiver since 2022. I'm sorry, Neighbors last year was 34%. That is the next closest since 2022. Right. And that's a pretty big gap, 38 to 34. Puka, going back to the yards per route run category conversation, has a yards per route run of 3.46 and is number 2. And number 3 this year is Tyreek at 2.55.
Right.
So number 1 is 4.61. Puka's at 2 at 3.46. And then number 3 is all the way down at 2.55. Like, just to put further into context those JSN and Puka numbers, frankly, but most importantly, I think in this category, JSN. Jamar also, let's talk about him, leads the league in catches and yards after the catch, which I think he's a very specific story, right? Because his EPA and his yards per route run are not what they normally would be because of the quarterback play, but they're still targeting him a ton. Mm-hmm. He's catching a lot of balls. And he's doing a lot of work for them picking up those yards after the catch. Right. His yards after the catch, Sam, 4.04. Khalil Shakir is second at 3.60. And then Puka is third at 2.93. And then it goes 2.84, 2.84, 2.83, 2.81, 2.61. So I'm just demonstrating for you that cluster is where the normal players are. Like, and the normal good players. Like, Jamar is way up here compared to everybody else who's very, very good still.
Exactly. I think that if we don't have the Jake Browning weeks for Jamar Chase and we don't have Puka Nacua getting hurt, I think we would see both of these players have a player of the year caliber score. And that is just a sign that Jackson Smith-Njigba would be having like an 11 season. Like we don't have enough space to go all the way up to the moon that Jackson Smith-Njigba is on right now, because Puka Nacua, I call him like the Holy Trinity. Every year he has an extremely high target share. He has an immensely high receiving SumerScore, and he has an immensely high yards per route run. And he's just like getting beat this year. And that's nothing against him. His is still way higher than everyone else. So Puka is certainly should be in the Offensive Player of the Year conversation, particularly as the Rams continue to succeed. I just don't think the team success is going to be there for the Bengals, but there's a real argument that if they had a full deck and Joe Burrow was the quarterback right now, that Jamar Chase would be having a similar season to the one that he had last year, which is really saying something, because we talked about it a lot, Lindsay. That was a really tough season to replicate. And thus far, he is at least approximating it with a, pretty bad hand of cards.
And we might be getting Joe Burrow back. Saw him back at practice.
I have been seeing that.
May or may not have put in a waiver bid for him in a fantasy league. I'm hoping to sneak that one in before people really start paying attention. Just stash him for the next couple of weeks and cross my fingers that he actually comes back. That would be a fascinating addition for the Bengals based on where they are. If they can come back and get back into that race. Okay, second team wide receivers also have some very interesting names on it.
Yeah, so Justin Jefferson from the Minnesota Vikings leads off that group. He is having another all-pro caliber year. Very similar to Jamar Chase. A lot of quarterback questions. Carson Wentz has played quarterback. J.J. McCarthy has played quarterback. J.J. McCarthy has come back to play quarterback. Nonetheless, he is immensely consistent. Same story for Amon-Ra St. Brown. We're seeing high target share for him within the top 5. We're seeing yards per route run within the top 5. As a result, we are seeing an excellent SumerScore for him as well. The real standout here, the real newcomer here is George Pickens, who was traded for by the Dallas Cowboys. Kind of came in as, you don't know what you're going to get from him. You don't know if he can be a true wide receiver one. CeeDee Lamb goes down, and he puts up 2 blue chip level games with Dak Prescott, one against the Packers and one later on in the season. And that was enough to push him into a Pro Bowl caliber grade and push him into the top 6 of the wide receivers according to SumerScore. This is a guy who will always, if he's performing well, do better at SumerScore than he will at something like yards per route run, because he is a contested catch deep ball guy. That is what he is asked to do in the Cowboys scheme, and that is what he has done both as the wide receiver 1 when CeeDee Lamb is not on the field, and as the wide receiver 2 or 1B when CeeDee Lamb is on the field this year.
Yeah, his other numbers paint a picture of explosive play.
Right.
14th in catches, 2nd in EPA. Like, put those 2 together and you get a lot of chunk yards happening. Okay, so that one is really interesting. Let's go to tight ends now. And I think that these will probably be the names that people expect to see here, starting with the first team and Trey McBride.
Yeah, no real surprise here. First team, Trey McBride. Trey McBride is basically a certified pass catcher number 1 for the Cardinals. He is putting up those type of numbers this year. He has a staggering 28.95% target share, which is first amongst tight ends, and it would be 8th amongst wide receivers. And he has a pretty good yards per route run clip. He's basically put up a blue chip performance in every single game except 2 amongst tight ends. That means he's performing at an extremely high level. He has been absolutely fantastic this year. He's really the engine behind the Cardinals offense right now.
Yeah. Trey McBride has the most routes run catches, total EPA, and the highest target share and targets per route run for a tight end. Tyler Warren, who is our second team All-Pro SumerScore tight end, the rookie, leads in receiving yards and yards after the catch, one of 6 tight ends with a target share over 20, which is, I think, impressive considering the wide receiver room that he's in, honestly.
I agree. And I think this is a real signal to the story that we have kind of been building all season about how these versatile tight ends are a real difference maker for high-level play callers like Shane Steichen has been in 2025. You think about what he's doing. Early on in the year, he was an excellent run blocker. We've kind of seen that start to dip. That's not entirely shocking given he's a rookie, but he has kept it up in the receiving game. He's put up several blue chip games. Currently, he is 3rd in offensive rookie of the year odds. He has plus odds. All the guys do have plus odds. Emeka Egbuka is the only one who is a favorite at minus 120. I think he's a little undervalued. We would have him as the offensive player, rookie offensive player of the year this year, according to SumerScore. I think he's had an excellent season. I think this is an interesting trend that you picked up on very early, Lindsay, in that if you can hit on these first-round, highly talented tight ends, it can make a difference for your offense fairly quickly.
But to your point, since you're giving credit to me, I'll give credit back to you. Your point was always you don't know which one.
Right.
And of the 2, Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland, kind of came down on the Colston Loveland side. And that we don't know that the last couple of weeks have been much, much better for him. Mm-hmm. And we don't know what that's going to turn into. But so far this year, the right answer in here and now has been Tyler Warren.
Yeah, definitely. And this is a very positive podcast all today. But if you do want to get in on the Colts regression, that may or may not come, even though I'm of the mind at this point that it's probably not coming. So don't bet on it. But that run blocking element is the element that you would kind of be, a slight red flag, is that at the beginning of the year, they were shocking teams. They were coming out with very new and interesting sets. Tyler Warren was able to get 2 straight blue chip run blocking games in as a result at the tight end position. Those have kind of started trailing off. I think the film is out on him. He is winning matchups in the receiving game, and that is what matters from his role right now. But maybe the book is a little bit out on the Colts, and that's why we've seen a kind of a struggle, or at least a shakeup in the last couple of weeks from them.
Yeah, it's been an interesting time. Let's get to, you mentioned run blocking with regards to Warren. Let's get to some other blockers. Let's talk about our first team SumerScore All-Pro offensive line. And some names. Do you think that this is a surprising group of people that we're about to pop up on the screen?
I really do not think this is a surprising group of people at all. Lindsay, I'm so excited for this Protector of the Year award. Like, this seems so far up SumerSports' alley. Like, this is something that we love to quantify using our SumerScores. And this year, the Protector of the Year, at least through the midseason, is Garrett Bowles from the Denver Broncos. A lot of people have shouted out how well the Denver Broncos offensive line is playing. And you know, I don't want to say criticized, but been like, hey, Bo Nix, you're getting a great hand dealt to you from this offensive line. And Garrett Bowles has been one of the primo people. He was one of the primo people in this in this score last year as well. He is a true player of the year candidate. The other person who is a player of the year candidate is Penei Sewell, who has been excellent in the run blocking game. The final Protector of the Year candidate guy is Creed Humphrey. And Lindsay, I'm really excited about these three guys in particular, all of which are almost always in the all-pro conversation in the last year or so. But they're all three at different positions. And so it's really exciting to kind of compare and contrast their impact based on what they're doing. Rounding out that list, Quentin Nelson, basically been in all-pro conversation since the time he's a rookie. And then a newcomer, Kevin Dotson, the right guard from the Rams, who has been very highly regarded, but is a very key element of that success rate offense that the Rams are running over there in LA.
Rams and Colts. Now, I think we've seen two players from each of those teams on the first team.
Correct.
Worth noting. And then the Lions obviously have Penei Sewell, and we've already seen Amon-Ra St. Brown on the second team there as well. I think that this one's an interesting one because offensive line is tough to find numbers that tell the story of, you know, who's playing well, right? Like, you can obviously go with like pressures allowed on pass rush snaps or sacks allowed, things like that. But oftentimes the entire story is really hard to grab.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that this is cool that this has the ability to paint a more fleshed out picture.
Definitely. And it also shows that there's different ways to do it. In a statistic like pressures per pass block snap, less is better, basically.
Yeah.
But Penei Sewell, for example, has excellent games. Like the route of the Baltimore Ravens, he had a rare 10-level game in that. Meanwhile, Garrett Bowles is just consistently putting up quality starts and blue chip performances. He's not having the rare type games, but just game after game, he's stacking them up. And I think the dichotomy of that is something that we haven't really had, or a discussion point that we haven't had for offensive linemen basically until now.
Shout out to DJ who does our graphics. This is my favorite one so far.
The big boys looking great.
Yeah. I mean, with Creed pointing and everything, what a good visual. I love this. What about our second team offensive line?
So our second team is where it starts getting a little weird, but really exciting. And the eye meets the AI. It's going to be some guys that you probably haven't heard of. Bernard Raymond, Indianapolis Colts, the young left tackle, has really started building a resume. And he really is having an all-pro caliber year. He's just behind the left tackle, Garrett Bowles. Like that, he's having an excellent year. He's putting together an excellent performance. And I think this is a major reason why Shane Steichen has been able to absolutely beat teams over the head in both the passing game and the running game, is due to his development. It's been really exciting to see. The other great story on here, Quinn Miners, obviously a guy who is utilized. He's a weapon, very much like Penei Sewell. He's one of these peak guys who will have these rare type games. He was an all-pro last year, according to us. He ended up making an all-pro team. Great story there. But Lindsay, I want to really highlight the two in the middle. I was wrong about this, and I will admit where I'm wrong. These two acquisitions, Joe Thuney and Drew Dahlman, were excellent moves by the Bears. They are now sitting at 9th in expected points added per play. They are starting to put everything together. Kyle Monangai is starting to run well. And the reason why is because he is running behind probably a Hall of Famer in Joe Thuney and a guy that a lot of people don't really know about in Drew Dahlman.
Tell me about Colton McKivitz. I think that a lot of just casual NFL fans are probably unfamiliar with that name.
Yeah, so Colton McKivitz is a right tackle for San Francisco 49ers. He has started for several years now, but has typically been in the shadow of Trent Williams, the left tackle, who very much like Miners and very much like Penei Sewell, is utilized as a weapon in that offense and has moved around that offense as well. Trent Williams have an excellent year as well, but McKivitz is really the reason why they have been able to be so stable, given that Brock Purdy has been hurt and Mac Jones has been in and Christian McCaffrey's athleticism has gone down and so forth and so on, and all this hubbub that has gone on with the 49ers. Their tentpole tackles, the ability for them to subscribe to the two tackle theory is absolutely the reason why they have been so competitive in their schedule. And Colton McKivitz is a major reason why at the right tackle position.
All right, so that's going to do it for the offensive side of the ball. Let's turn to the defenders and get to the guys who try to get to the quarterback, starting with the edge rushers. And one first-teamer that will not surprise you that, let's see, we could have credited to the Dallas Cowboys, but instead is a Packer, and that is, of course, Micah Parsons.
Yeah, I think of all positions, this is probably the least surprising, other than maybe wide receiver to a certain degree, but I'm still going to say Jackson Smith and Jigba is not there. Like going into this year, Michael Parsons, Will Anderson, everyone knew they were absolutely incredible. They are performing absolutely incredible. Micah Parsons has been an absolute monster in the pass rush game. He's one of only 3 edge rushers who have logged a rare game score this year, and he did that in week 7. He's leading the league in pressures according to SumerBrain. He's been certified worth 2 first-round picks and Kenny Clark that was sent back to the Cowboys. There's no doubt. I wonder what he would look like on the Cowboys defense. But
so you said that this is a no-brainer, but I think some people will be surprised not to see Myles Garrett's name here.
Yeah, so Myles Garrett is an interesting one. He has also done extremely well. He is basically our 6th best edge rusher. And to put this in context, this is my favorite part about SumerScore, is that we can basically say, yeah, he's great, and he is having a impact level season. There's just a bunch of other guys that are having impact level seasons, and we're trying to split hairs. So that's the reason why we like using these little colors and these little monikers, because that doesn't mean that, you know, Myles Garrett isn't having a good season. It's just that these guys are just a hair above him. There's 16 players who have an impact starter level blue chip season grade this year at the edge rushing position. There's so much talent right now in the NFL on the edge rushing position. And I wonder if that's one of the reasons why, you know, we're not having an excellent quarterback season, because there's so much talent from edge rushers this year. And so as a result, Myles Garrett is having an excellent year. We're really, really splitting hairs. He had a sub-starter run stuff game in week 8. He had a sub-starter pass rush game this past week in week 10. Otherwise, he'd probably be on the first team or the second team. But it just, those slight little in a single role will put you a bit behind, even though he's still having an impact starter level.
Which
season.
goes back to the point that we made at the beginning of the show, and that this is like all of these guys are so closely clumped,
right,
that to describe them in tiers is actually descriptively more accurate than describe them in a rankings sheet, because you could have 1 and then 10, and someone who doesn't have access to all of the data that led to why you're 1 versus why you're 10. Yeah. They would think maybe there's a very big difference between 1 and 10, when in this case, it's actually pretty clumped together. So you mentioned that Myles Garrett is 6, which means that he's not on our second team All-Pro either. Who is?
Aiden Hutchinson of the Detroit Lions is our 3rd best edge rusher this year. He has been absolutely fantastic. You can see here, he's basically 2/10 of a percentage point, or 2 percentage points away from having a 10 level season, frankly, and getting up in that 99th percentile. These guys are having excellent seasons. He's like 2nd in pressures this year, and he's really made an impact coming off of an Achilles injury that not an Achilles injury, like a shattered leg on national television. He's came back, gotten right back to where he is. That's a reason I think that the Lions were so excited to extend him in the middle of the year after they weren't able to come to extension prior to the year, because he has performed at the tippy top level of the National Football League this year.
Byron Young, I would like to go into some detail about, because I think he's just a very, very interesting player on a very interesting defense.
Yeah. So another one of our honorable mentions, shared verse, is the big name kind of pass rusher on this team. Byron Young has been pretty much at the level, if not better, in terms of SumerScore. He is better this year. And that is why this defense has become an absolute problem for offenses. Byron Young is the more consistent. He's going to contribute in the run game. He's going to contribute in the pass game. He's kind of the do-it-all guy who has been there for several years. Just an absolute credit to Les Snead and Sean McVay and that whole crew there that he has been able to pop out so well. He has a clean sweep of green starter or above games in game SumerScores, and he combines an excellent blend of high performance run defense games and pass rush games. Meanwhile, Verse, on the other hand, has racked up 42 pressures, 6th in the NFL, and is allowed to be kind of that wild power guy because Byron Young, on the flip side, is so consistent. And it's this absolutely awesome tandem alongside Braden Fisk at the defensive tackle position, alongside Kobe Turner at the defensive tackle position, and alongside the newly added Nate Landman, who is playing linebacker, all comes together with a couple other guys that we'll mention later to be the 4th best team in expected points added allowed per play. This Rams defense is very underrated and is the reason why they are one of the better teams in the league this year.
It's a really interesting. I was just having a conversation actually with a Rams fan, and I was, I think, giving the team more credit than my friend was, who follows the Rams. And I think a lot of these players individually playing well kind of pop in and under the radar way. I think that this is not a defense in particular that is littered with household names, right? Like Jared Verse is probably the closest to maybe kind of, we're on that trajectory, certainly, but like there's so many individual players who are playing at a very, very high level that I just think that they're such an interesting team to keep my eye on as we head down the final 8 games of the season and then into the playoffs. Let's look at the linebackers here. We're not going to have a Rams player on our first team here, but we do have a Lion.
Definitely. And so the first team linebackers are Jack Campbell, Detroit Lions, standout this year, and really has made the transition from Aaron Glenn to Kelvin Shepard a whole new world. That linebacking core, Anzalone and Campbell and Derek Barnes, has performed at an extremely high level, allowed them to do some very interesting things. But Jack Campbell is playing at an all-pro caliber level alongside Zach Bond, who jumped on to Vic Fangio's defense and all of a sudden became an absolute game wrecker. He's having another excellent year. A new name here, and we'll get into kind of the implications of this, Lindsay, but is the Titans' Cedric Gray, second-year player. He has been excellent in run defense. Last year, this was a defense that was kind of sneaky good. This year hasn't been able to perform up to the standard, but Cedric Gray is holding his own. And so we're kind of shifting now that Fred Warner is out due to injuries. There's some guys getting older who will be on this list on the second team. But we're kind of coming into a new age of linebackers. Jack Campbell, young guy. Cedric Gray, young guy. So it's interesting to see these new guys popping in SumerScore.
Very much so. And yes, I just realized I did skip the interior defensive line. So we'll go back to the defensive tackles in just a second. We'll finish out the linebackers first, though. Jack Campbell, every time I see his name and the way that he is playing, I think of that draft with Gibbs and Campbell both being drafted in the first round, and the blowback that they got for going against the positional value. I've said this several times on this podcast, but man, that sure turned out to be great picks in both cases. Interesting that we're seeing a Titans player on this list here. Just want to note that the Titans struggling in a whole bunch of different ways this year, but getting some good play out of Cedric Gray. All right, let's go to the second team linebackers and a few other teams that we have not seen represented so far getting representation at this position.
Yeah, and I think this is a sign. I have one of my favorite things I've ever written is up on SumerSports.com. It's called For the Love of the Linebacker. And this is a sign of how a linebacker can anchor a defense, but so many other things can kind of go wrong. So it's the weird mix of what being a linebacker means today. Jordan Brooks right now, the Miami Dolphins defense is not playing extremely well, even though they have looked better in recent weeks. He is the center of that defense of a very complex Anthony Weaver defense. He has been playing very well. And then you look at the two other ones. These are all veteran guys, by the way. You look at Robert Spillane, let go by the Raiders. I thought that was a very interesting decision, especially given their hiring of Pete Carroll. He comes in immediately, is a contributor to a Patriots defense, which had a legacy of being extremely good. Last year was one of the bottom teams in the league. This year has fought their way back up to 13th in expected points added per play and is allowed and is looking better each week. And then finally, Demario Davis. And Lindsay, I'm a Saints fan. The Saints are not looking great. They had a win this week that I was very excited about. But I was like, man, Demario's playing really good. Like he's a legend. I wanted him to stay. We talked about him with trades. I said I was going to cry on air if he got traded. Luckily, he's still in the black and gold. But then I went and looked at the better numbers. And there's kind of some going on with the Saints defense that I think popped up against the Carolina Panthers, where they're above average in this league in both expected points added allowed per play and success rate. I think a lot of that is fueled by the veteran Demario Davis playing once again at an all-pro level.
It's wild that he is still playing this well at this age. I do want to note, I feel like we've seen more linebackers play well at older ages. Bobby Wagner last year garnered some discussion. I kind of feel like, is there something to that?
I think what I've been looking at this. This is definitely going to be an off-season study of mine. Given that we have guys like Avril Reese at the top of the draft, who's like kind of a linebacker defensive end. We've discussed this with Abdul Carter and Jalen Walker last year. Like, is there value in the linebacker position? Jahad Campbell was a guy who just missed this list, a rookie that was taken in the first round, who has been used as a linebacker, despite a lot of people thinking he would be used as an edge. I think you need such a certain blend to succeed that late into your career. Davis, Brooks, some of these other guys, Bobby Wagner, were excellent at coverage throughout their career. And as their coverage has kind of declined, that same mentality has allowed them to be used on blitzes and in the run game, while also bringing in kind of a more coverage-centric scheme or more coverage-centric linebacker alongside them. So I think the ability to cover at a high level, as Edrin Cooper, who just missed this list. And by the way, this is the position group I was talking about, where guys like Demario Davis, Edrin Cooper, Jahad Campbell, several other guys were literally separated by 0.001 of a standard deviation. Like, I mean, we're talking about like minute differences. A lot of these guys have been playing very well at a blue chip level. But I think that's my hypothesis before I do my research, is that if you're an excellent coverage linebacker early on in your career and are also succeeding at run defense, that run defense will stick, and you can bring in someone, or you can run a scheme that can cover up the coverage questions as you start to get older.
Want to take note, see that Middle of Farm Open reposted our show, sharing it with his audience. Thank you so much for that. Jimmy, appreciate the comment saying that we do a good job, and he just found out about us. Welcome, welcome. Steven here wanted Andrew Thomas at left tackle. So didn't get his wish there.
Yeah, and this is a great learning point about SumerScore. So again, like what we're trying to do, number one, how rare is this season for this player, given all 10 weeks of the year? Number two, how much can we trust it? Because Andrew Thomas has missed a couple games. His season is, as by definition, not going to be super rare because he's only played a couple of games, unless he absolutely blows it out of the park, which we've kind of seen how the Giants offense has looked at times this year. So hasn't necessarily blown out of the park. And number two, we definitely won't be able to trust it just because we don't have the extreme amount of reps that we have thus far. So great learning point there. Maybe Andrew Thomas will come by the end of the year, but right now, not up in the massive blue chip level performances this year.
Feels like a good time to ask if any of you guys have any players that you are wondering about, or maybe thought would make this team at the positions that we've revealed already. Go ahead and comment it. Twitter, YouTube, wherever you're watching, and we'll try and get to those comments. Also curious to hear if you disagree about any of the assessments. I mean, it's possible Sam and I disagree with some of these assessments and would vote differently because, as I stated at the beginning of the show, these are not our all-pro lists. These are straight SumerScores. We're telling you who has scored the highest in our SumerScore metric at each of these positions. And I know I skipped defensive tackles, so let's circle back there and touch on these interior guys where we're going to see another Titans defender show up.
Yeah, so just to mainline this, we talked about inside backers and edge rushers being a place where there's a lot of guys performing at extremely high level. We talked about quarterbacks being a place where there's not a ton of guys performing at extremely high level. Interior defensive line this year, very strangely, has been a place where there has not been an immense amount of extremely great performances. You'll see both of our guys here are 8 Pro Bowl level caliber impact starters. We have not seen a true all-pro caliber performance this year, and definitely haven't seen an award-worthy performance this year either. Cameron Hayward, once again, at the top. And then you mentioned the Titans defender. Jeffrey Simmons is one of those guys where he did get injured, and his performances prior to that were so great that he is still having a rare type season. You got to hope that they can get him back, and thus the vibes will start to get better. They'll start to build on the defense as Jeffrey Simmons gets healthy. Cam Ward probably starts looking better as the year ends, and you can kind of push into 2026 looking good. But Jeffrey Simmons has been absolutely awesome. He has put up a quality start in every game prior to his injury, and he's joined by Cameron Hayward, who just remains dominant, remains doing great stuff. He has put together quality starts in weeks 2 and on. So these two guys have been immensely consistent. Would love to see some higher top end. The only guy who's really hit that true top end has been Jeffrey Simmons, who has struggled with injury in recent weeks.
What about the second team all pro? I know there's one guy on this list that we saw on Monday Night Football last night.
Yeah. So the second team is led, and Lindsay, I swear we may have talked about this with our friends, Brett Coleman and EJ Snyder. Moro Ojomo, notably 68 rated in Madden. He's made this list. And this is, I don't think this is a shock to us, really, Lindsay. Now, you got to kind of caveat, excellent scheme that he's in. He's playing with very talented people. But the bet that the Philadelphia Eagles made was that after Milton Williams had a Pro Bowl caliber year last year, that Ojomo, who played a lot of snaps and was 79th percentile, he was basically a quality starter, very close to it last year, was going to be able to make that jump. He has certifiably made that jump thus far. And that's why that defense is starting to round out into shape and basically shut down the Packers defense yesterday. Joining him, Quinnen Williams. The reason why the Cowboys really wanted him from the Jets was to shore up that run defense. That is what he has done this year in a Jets jersey. He is the only player to have a rare run defense SumerScore amongst defensive tackles this year. He did that in week 3. The Cowboys run defense is not very good. The Jets run defense is sneakily has a pretty good success rate. We'll see if he's able to make any changes on that defense. I don't know if it's going to happen, but as a result of his performances, he's made the all-pro midseason team.
I wonder how painful it is for Cowboys fans to listen to you talk about how the run defense is not good when they specifically made the trade that they did to Green Bay because they needed to get better at stopping the run. Anyway, they'll be happy to see Quinnen Williams in a blue star on this team.
A very interesting item too. Like he's kind of had 2 back-to-back bye weeks, just as a weird element of the schedule.
He'll be well rested or rusty.
So he should be well rested or rusty. We'll see how he looks his first week with the Cowboys, but hopefully he can put up another one of those rare run defense SumerScores. I think that would make Cowboys fans pretty happy.
All right. I want to get to the cornerbacks here. And I think that this is a hugely important position, obviously. Very important that you can lock down the wide receivers and impact the rush, all of the different things, right? So this is a high positional value position. And I think that the names on our first team are not necessarily the household names that everybody thinks of when you think of those lockdown corners. And I think that that's a really fun part of this exercise. So we get to talk about these guys.
Definitely. And Lindsay, on our trade show, we talked about how there's not a ton of cornerbacks that are performing extremely well. These guys have separated themselves. However, it has been a tough year for defensive backs, and that's why basically everyone in the league has been looking for defensive backs, except the Jets, which we will get to in a second. However, let's highlight the guys on the first team. Keyshawn Nixon, we talked about how SumerScores allows these guys to kind of have big hit it out of the park games, and that can carry them. Keyshawn Nixon has had 4 blue chip SumerScore games this year, and he has been a major reason why that Packers defense has been able to perform so well despite the offense struggling in recent weeks. He's put on a pretty good show recently. That had a pretty good game last night as well. Another element which can show how SumerScore really kind of can separate out guys who are having really good seasons despite the team really struggling is Diamador Lenore, who 27th ranked in expected points added per pass, San Francisco 49ers defense. You wouldn't think that a lot of these guys just on sheer paper would be performing at an all-pro, but you got to consider that their defensive line is decimated. Their linebacker room is decimated. Their safety room is decimated. Lenore has been the consistent person to continue to play well. He's virtually one of the only day one starters on that defense. He's had a quality start in 3 of his last 4, and he's truly battling to keep the 49ers head above water and keep them competitive. He's done a really good job this year.
Quentin Lake in the slot. Another Ram.
I was leaving it to you, Lindsay, to say another Ram. Quentin Lake has been one of the best players at his position this year. It's pretty insane. And you think about what the Rams are really doing this year, which is unique, which is they're basically like trotting out dime most of the time. And one of the reasons why they're able to do it is Quentin Lake. He has a true player of the year caliber score. Like, the dude's killing it. There's no 9 cornerbacks. Quentin Lake has been one of the guys who has gone above and beyond. And as a result, he gets that player of the year caliber score. He has the most blue chip SumerScore game performances by any corner, slot or outside this year. He's a major reason why they can go up against the 49ers, who are trotting out Juszczyk and trotting out Tungus and trotting out all these heavy bodies and just be like, you know what? We're playing dime. And Quentin Lake is one of the major reasons that they're able to do that.
Incredible. Is that 5 for the Rams?
It is 5 thus far. I feel there's a narrative emerging, Lindsay.
There might be. Okay, we're not done yet. All right, let's. Okay, so that's the first team. Let's get to the second team cornerbacks.
Yeah. So on the second team, I mentioned the New York Jets a little bit. They send out Sauce Gardner. League sources were saying that they're deconstructing a top 5 defense. That was certainly not the case in terms of expected points added per play allowed. However, I think the reason why they were really okay with letting Sauce go is because they're getting great value out of their addition of Brandon Stevens this offseason. And I think maybe when they went back and looked at his tape with the Baltimore Ravens, they thought that when he was playing in the slot, it wasn't exactly a good fit for him. He got moved to the outside later on in the defense when the defense kind of came together with the Baltimore Ravens. I think they thought that was a lot more natural for him. Put him in a Jets jersey. He's been very good. He's had a quality start every week since week 5, including 2 blue chip performances. And again, quietly, that Jets defense is 6th in success rate allowed. And so I really want to see how they continue to build if Brandon Stevens is part of their plans moving forward, given that they have him on a pretty good deal. And I think this was a very interesting piece of roster building that Darren Muji and the Jets were able to put together. Joining him, Kamari Laster. And this is just the rich get richer. I mean, Kamari Laster is now playing at a Pro Bowl caliber. Last year, Derek Stingley was an all-pro. They have safeties and defensive ends. We already mentioned Will Anderson, linebackers that are playing well. The rich get richer. Kamari Laster is having a great year. Finally, Cooper DeJean is just going to be our guy, Lindsay. Last year, we had him on our all-pro team. Didn't end up making the real all-pro team, but we had him on our SumerScore all-pro team. He makes it again this year with a Pro Bowl caliber score.
I would not have thought if you just polled a bunch of people and said there's going to be a Texans cornerback on the one of the all-pro teams. Which one is it? I think most people probably would have said Stingley, right?
I think so, but you really look at what he's been doing, particularly post-bye, and he's just been shutting down people. He's had an impact starter level SumerScore after that bye week, and he's been performing really well. And I think this is something that is we're gonna have to monitor going deeper into the season, because I think his arrow is strongly pointing up, and maybe by the end of the season we'll be talking about him a little bit more.
I also think that cornerbacks, again, kind of like offensive line, there are a few positions here that are hard to find numbers that really tell the story. And I think cornerback is kind of one of them. I mean, you could go, okay, snaps per target, the number of snaps that you're played versus how frequently you're targeted, with a low number there, or actually a high number because you want it to be a lot of snaps in between times that you're targeted, which shows that you've got your guy kind of locked down. Or you could go snaps per catches allowed to accomplish the same thing. But this one's tough because there are different ways that you can perform at a high level as a cornerback. You mentioned last year.
Right.
There were different examples of people there. Surtain was a guy who was never targeted, and that was the way that you could really tell the story of what his value was. Like, look at how many times the quarterback scanned the defense and said, "Not over there," and didn't throw at him. But then you have Stingley, who was kind of a different type of a story, right?
Yep.
Like, he was actually targeted quite frequently, but he didn't give up very much. So I think that the SumerScore might be a valuable metric to kind of help us parse out who's actually playing well. I mean, that's true for every position, but I think there are some positions we need it more for.
Yeah. And SumerScore, given it is based off of tracking data, is going to be more detailed on the coveragey type guys, not necessarily the guys who are going to.
Did you say coveragey?
Yeah. Like the guys who are legitimately like decreasing space and
got it.
Or having valuable relationships to the receiver that they're trying to cover, rather than the guys who are maybe, 2 steps ahead of the quarterback trying to bait a guy and then get a pick or something like that. Like that, given the nature of what we're quantifying here, there are many ways to quantify cornerbacks, coverage players in general, but we're definitely going to try to nail those more consistent guys in terms of the quality of their coverage.
Yeah. And then SumerBrain's another layer there where you can kind of find out more about them too. Cause I think that there are so many, like we talked about this last week with Sauce being traded, and the way that they'll use him in Indianapolis, and the fact that they like to press their corners. And if you put him in press man, then he's going to be at his best. So you could really go into SumerBrain. You could find out how frequently these cornerbacks are in man coverage or are in zone coverage, that kind of stuff. So let's get to the last position that we have here, and that is the safeties. And I'm just going to lead with it since I know you're waiting for it from me here. There's another Ram.
There is another Ram. Cameron Curl, Los Angeles Rams, another defensive back who has made an absolute impact. He's the only safety alongside Talanoa Hufanga, who is on this list, who's one of my favorite players in the league. Talked about him a million times, and I'll get to him in a second. But he's the only other player to earn an all-pro level SumerScore on the year. So this is another kind of small sample, really, really high-level guys, and those two guys are Talanoa Hufanga and Cameron Curl. He has racked up a starter-level game score in all but one of his games. He's been excellent. He's another core part of this very, very well-rated Rams defense. Now let's get to Hufanga, who I am obsessed with, Lindsay. Like all through the offseason, I'm like, okay, so the Broncos are just gonna like add this guy, and if he's healthy, he's gonna be a beast. And that's basically what's happened. In fact, Lindsay, he is right now the best player at his position in the National Football League. Amongst safeties, going back to 2016, he is 99.9th percentile.
That's insane. Coming off an injury with that question mark going into the season, should they pay him? What should we do to have this kind of a season on the back end of that conversation is wild.
Right. And so many would think, he's just doing it being a wild boy in the run defense game. Not the case. He has 2 blue chip games in coverage, 5 blue chip games in run defense. And there's also some excellent breakdowns about how he is impacting the pass rush as well and changing how the Broncos run the pass rush. Here's the impact. Basically the same team plus Hufanga as they had last year. They've had a little banged up Surtain as well. So keep that in mind. Their defensive player of the year has been a little bit banged up. the Broncos rank first in success rate allowed. That percentage is 36.22%. Last year, the Broncos were first in success rate allowed. That was 38.98%. So they have basically improved their success rate, at least through 10 weeks, almost 3 percentage points over last season. And over last season was already insane. Yeah. So this defense has just gotten substantially better because they added a guy who they can put literally anywhere and he will make a big difference. As a result, like, he's not necessarily in the Defensive Player of the Year discussion right now. I would like to enter him into the discussion because he is being like utilized in so many different ways that is able to cover up a lot of spots. Not that there's a lot of spots on this defense at all, but he's really been a force amplifier for this defense in a way that we didn't see any single player on their team be in the past.
Is this a case, and I don't think this takes anything away from Hufanga, but is this a case of when you put a good player on in a good environment, it allows them to be the best version of themselves because they're not looking at the guy next to them and saying, I might have to account for like what he's not going to do well or something like that?
It's an excellent point. And I think particularly as it pertains to the run defense element where he's kind of able to cut wild, I think that's the reason why we're seeing like half of his games be blue chip level games. Coverage is a weak link system. So it kind of has to be different. Like, you know, like you got to do your job in coverage. And I think that's a real testament to him. He wasn't known as like an excellent coverage guy. He's playing really well this year. And I think pass rush is definitely like a scheme. Like when you're able to just be like, guess what? You get this guy coming at you too, alongside Nick Benito, who has been playing at a quality starter level. It has been really good in the pass rush game, not as great in run defense, but and alongside Jonathan Cooper and alongside Zach Allen, alongside all this other stuff. That's definitely because he's in a better defense, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think Hufanga too. I'm a Troy Polamalu girl from way back in the day. And there's something about like the safety with that hair flying down the field that I am programmed to enjoy.
Definitely.
So he's got the look. He checks that box as well. Okay, what's our second team safeties look like? Who are we going to get into the mix? This is the last group of people that we're going to highlight here.
So our second team are going to be some guys who you may not know their names. Kobe Bryant from the Seattle Seahawks is our first safety on the second team. He is a guy from Cincinnati. He was on that excellent Cincinnati team that included Sauce Gardner, included Ivan Pace, all these other people. And he's the only Seattle Seahawk on this list. That's not to say there's not other people performing extremely well. Leonard Williams
on defense.
Performed on defense, correct.
Okay.
Leonard Williams is performing extremely well, but he is really, I think, a signifier, given our discussion about Hufanga, of how strong this defense is as a collective unit. Currently they're fifth in expected points added allowed per play. They are coming together and running Mike McDonald's scheme in an excellent way. And Kobe Bryant has been a main producer in that defense and has been a main beneficiary of that defense. And so then you look at Ronnie Hickman, who is an undrafted player from a couple of years ago, and he has been excellent in run defense in a defense that had Carson Swessinger, who was our defensive rookie of the year, at least as it pertains to this outfit, and Myles Garrett on it as well. He's been excellent in run defense as well. And so these are two guys to keep an eye on as the season goes on. See if their name starts getting brought up more and more. See if you can identify exactly what they're doing, because SumerScore has identified that they're playing at a really high level.
Okay, so we've got Kobe Bryant and Ronnie Hickman there. And Ronnie Hickman is the only player on the Browns to make one of our all-pro rosters.
Correct.
As a second teamer.
Correct.
We have, let's counting up here really quick. Tallied or deep. I mean, it's the Rams. The Rams are number one. I got ahead of myself there. I think I counted a little bit too soon, that fifth player. They do have 5 players total on the first and second teams. What is wild to me is that the Rams have 4 players on our first team alone.
Right.
And then there's 5 teams that have 2 players on the first team. Which one of these is not like the others? Denver, Detroit, Green Bay, Indy, Tennessee.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, like, look, people can have standout performances, and I think that Jeffrey Simmons was a true standout, gets injured, and then the wheels come off. It is a good sign for Tennessee in future years. But again,
On the
we
defensive
said
side of the ball. Yeah.
on the defense side of the ball, we said that last year, and it's not looking great. So, I mean, like, at least they have two guys that are still playing well.
There were 9 teams that were shut out.
Yep.
It's the Falcons, the Ravens, not a single player here.
Correct.
That Lamar injury maybe doing a lot of damage.
Henry fumbles and Henry kind of struggling in there as well. Hurts as well.
Bills do not have a player on this team, on either team.
Yep. James Cook notably dropped out as compared to our progress report. But I mean, again, like we're splitting hairs here. Like Christian McCaffrey and Taylor are having a great year. So this is no qualms to James Cook.
Yeah, this is not a commentary about the Bills team, just pointing out the fact that, and also it's been a down year for Josh Allen by Josh Allen standards. Right. So, this is, and that could change by the end of the year. He could go on a heater. Definitely. And this could 100% change. Panthers don't have a player on either of these two teams. Jaguars don't either. Mm-hmm. Raiders do not. Though if Colton Miller had stayed healthy, I think he would have probably been in the running.
Yeah, a couple of near misses on those teams. Damian Lewis, the guard from the Panthers, just missed what basically a catch of the guard position being pretty good this year. What was the other position? Max Crosby, obviously another guy who just missed. He's one of those edge rushers who was extremely high. And then what was the second team you mentioned? Jaguars, Josh Hines Allen as well. Was another? Oh
yeah, Josh, my pressures guy. I'm a big proponent of pressures. I don't mean that in a demeaning way. I'm not, but he's like the poster child for the guy who gets consistent pressures and doesn't always necessarily bring it home with a sack. But I feel like there's a lot of value in the pressures alone. So I didn't mean that as a bad thing. Okay. Giants also don't have anybody on this list.
Correct.
Okay. Just no comment. Ostofsky throws his hands up in the air.
A lot of hurt players.
Yeah. This one I think is a little bit surprising, and that's the Bucks.
That's a great call out. I think let's walk through it. I mean, Wirfs obviously is going to get dinged for some of those injuries. Egbuka is an interesting guy that was not left off, although
he's not high enough. Like I wouldn't even expect him to be high enough. Like he's a great rookie of the year conversation. He's been outstanding, but not necessarily like the wide receivers. They're on the first and second team are bunkers. Yeah, so we're not in that tier yet.
Yeah, Vita Vea was like the 5th or 6th best defensive tackle. So Vita Vea is the real standout that could have been on this list.
Commanders also didn't have anybody on this list.
Yeah, the defense is not performing well, and pretty much everything is banged up on that team. Laramie Tunsil is like the 3rd best left tackle right now.
Yeah, worth noting. This will be interesting also, just to keep this kind of stuff. Obviously this isn't even for the whole year. We'll do this at the end of the year and see how this fully shakes out. But from year to year to even track and see how teams flip. Like the Rams with, again, 5 players on the first and second team, how that changes from a year-to-year basis and how quickly you can maybe go from a team that has 0 to having that many. That'll be interesting to track. So Lions and Colts have 4 total. Eagles, Broncos, and Niners have 3 players total. Pats, Cowboys, Texans, Packers, Bears, Seahawks, and Titans have 2. And then these are the teams that have 1 player on one of the 2 all-pro teams. And that's the Cardinals, Bengals, Browns, Chiefs, Chargers, Dolphins, Vikings, Saints, Jets, Steelers.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of narratives I picked out from this. Number one is that everything and everyone on the Los Angeles Rams is still somehow underrated, even though it seems like we talk about them every single week, Lindsay. We've talked about Puka since April. We started talking about Matt Stafford, who is starting to get some MVP buzz in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And we've talked about this defense basically since the 49ers game. But they're a real Super Bowl contender. And I don't think anyone is putting him in that. Probably just because you get worried if Stafford gets injured. But if they're going to be able to keep him clean behind an offensive line, which has a first team all-pro on this list, and Kevin Dotson, and has some other good performers, and is succeeding at a very high rate, particularly in the run game,
I
and
mean,
has a defense that is causing massive problems with strange schemes, like
if you're going to throw 13 personnel out on the field at the rate that they have these last couple of weeks, like, just keep us guessing. I don't know. What are they going to do next?
Exactly. Like it feels like everything is underrated about them.
I agree.
Literally go find something on FanDuel or whatever. And it's probably underrated. I think that's the main takeaway. The second takeaway is I think the Colts and the Broncos are for real. You have guys on offense and on defense. Travarius Ward on our progress report before he went out due to concussion was very highly rated on this, is not because he's missed several weeks. But they have guys that are very highly rated around the impact starter, quality starter scores for us. Like, I think the Colts are just for real, and I think the Broncos are just for real. When you have a good offensive line and you have good defensive players, you're probably going to be a good team.
You can read about more about all of this, all of the details at SumerSports.com. Sam's put together an article about all of these picks and what it means, and more of the numbers that he cited here. So if you are a visual learner, you can go check them out there. And then if you're interested in any more of the deep data that we talked about surrounding these players, some of the data points that we did not mention here because we were talking about the SumerScore data behind their all-pro caliber scores. That's at SumerSports.com. You can just click on data and filter it for whatever you want to filter it for. I spend like a lot of time in there just filtering it and seeing what pops up that might surprise me.
No, I love doing all the radio hits around the country too, Lindsay, because like I did an ultra deep dive into the Packers last week, and I was grinding through their red zone stuff. I was grinding through when pressured, what was Jordan Love doing? Where do the wide receivers sit on some of these metrics that we care about? So it's always fun to grind through that, and it's fun to use Sumer Brain as well, where you can get some of that more detailed data. Go check out some of our videos on YouTube or on Twitter for guides to kind of how to use that. I've used it 6 times today, so used it for a lot of this article as well. So it's
one thing I want to go back to. Since we've been talking about SumerScore metrics here today, you talked about the Packers. There is an interesting story that comes out of these SumerScores with regards to their offense. What is it?
It's that their offensive line just isn't good. And I think that's really shocking to think about. You know, Zach Tom has been an analytics darling for years. Eldridge Jenkins has been,
banged up,
yeah. So whether it's been banged up, whether it's been poor play from young players, whether it's been moving guys around, they just haven't been able to build an identity. And the reason why I don't necessarily think is Jordan Love. I don't even necessarily think it's, you know, the pass catchers not having a true blue chip guy, especially now that Tucker Kraft is out. I think it's just the offensive line struggles, and Matt LaFleur is afraid of putting his players behind an offensive line that he doesn't trust. And so play calling starts to look a little weird. There starts to be hectic play, especially when you're going against a guy like Jalen Phillips, who was another impact starter level guy who immediately goes into Vic Fangio's system and dominates yesterday. And
Zach
it just
Tom
starts to
right
look
into
weird.
Jordan Love last night.
Exactly. It starts to look a little rough. And I think when you really boil it down, I don't know if this is a play calling or chemistry thing. I think it could just be a personnel thing at the offensive line position for the Packers.
Yeah, it's interesting context. And again, going back to what we were talking about when we were looking at O-line is so hard to evaluate, and it's under discussed in terms of casual fans. And so I think that context surrounding the conversation that people are having today about Jordan Love and about Matt LaFleur is very interesting context and important to keep in mind. All right, that's going to do it for our show today. Thank you so much for joining us. For Sam and Stopsky, I'm Lindsay. We'll see you back here again next week.